You don't have to, but that's okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, citizens and guests, as well as council and staff. I know that there are folks that are signing in for the public hearing later today or later this evening. But we will get our meeting started. I guarantee you'll have more than enough time to sign in before we get to that section of the agenda. And with that, Councilmember Valdez is tied up out of town, so he will not be joining us this evening. And with that, Colleen.
Mayor Cernanek.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Here.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Stein.
Here.
Okay, if you could join me, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And one item of change in the agenda with regard the two items on ordinances for second reading and public hearing. We're going to reverse the order of those that are in the agenda to take on the CRW systems technology issue before the rezoning. And so just make a note of that. Council, any other changes to the agenda to consider? Seeing none, looking for a motion with regard minutes to be approved.
I have a motion. I have a motion based on the clerk's certification that the September 8th and September 9th video recordings as the minutes for the September 8th and September 9th 2014 study sessions be approved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second before us. Council, if you could please vote. Okay.
The vote is 6 in favor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we move to citizen comments. These are unscheduled appearances and are an opportunity for any citizen to express opinions or ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of the scheduled agenda. Generally, an immediate response should not be expected. Typically, issues are referred to city staff for follow-up information or research and reported back to the council and the individual that initiated the comment or inquiry. If any citizens would like to speak during unscheduled public appearances, please complete a green citizen card. They're on the tables located at the entrance to the council chambers. And please provide that green card either to the city clerk or leave it at the podium. But we will ask that you at least announce your name as you approach the podium.
They need to know that not to speak in regards to the zoning matter.
Yeah. And this is for items that are not otherwise on the agenda. And the time limit will be 4 minutes. So if you could, anyone looking to speak during unscheduled comments. Jeannie?
Good evening, Council. My name is Jeannie Erickson. I live in District 1. I am pro-growth. I am pro-business. I am pro-jobs. I am pro-development. And I am pro-Littleton. Tonight I'd like to address an urban renewal area called Columbine Square, specifically the vacated shopping center at the corner of Bellevue and Federal. Mr. Chang, the owner of the property, who lives in California, kicked all of his tenants out over a year ago. This was not a property that was empty and failing, and only until last year does it look that way because he kicked everyone out. He has most likely made a hefty profit on the property due to the citizens in that neighborhood for the past 25 years. Now, to make a bigger profit than he probably ever imagined, Urban Renewal Lift wants to include him in on a deal of a lifetime. Let's build more apartments. We will give you money to help you build them because you are in dire need of money. I guess the 1,500 new apartments that were already approved by the city council last year are just not enough. This neighborhood does not need any more apartments. It is not lacking in apartments. What the city of Littleton needs is for retail to stay at that site. Littleton is landlocked. We need to keep our retail. Here's a short list of comments that have been made by citizens of Littleton regarding urban renewal. Number 1, City Council needs to hold a tight rein on Lyft. Number 2, the public needs to continue their scrutiny regarding urban renewal. Number 3, this entire process has seemed very rushed. Number 4, Littleton is being shoved through this template regarding urban renewal, and I feel personally insulted, and I think Littleton citizens should as well. Number 5, Lyft has not built consensus in Littleton, and that is why I think Lyft will not succeed. Who made these comments? All of these comments were made by the City of Littleton Planning Board members at the September 11th, 2014 Planning Board meeting. Again, I am pro-growth. I am pro-development. I am pro-business. I am pro-jobs, and I am pro-Littleton. Littleton has grown and redeveloped without urban renewal, therefore distributing our tax dollars to the appropriate entities. Let the economy dictate growth. Let the market dictate the market. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And Jeannie, just to clarify, as far as the urban renewal, if there is any tax increment financing in conjunction with the urban renewal, it actually goes for public improvements that would be needed in conjunction with that. It doesn't go to the property owner. So just to clarify that. Is there anyone else for public comments? Yes? Oh. Congratulations, by the way.
Get the overhead, please.
And speak into the microphone, please.
Hi, good evening. I'm Leah Burkett, 5730 South Bemis Street. Long time no see, y'all. Hope you've been well. As you know, Ben and I had a little baby. Aubrey was born in July, and we've had a great time getting settled in with her and especially enjoy walking, so we love that new community trail, and I wanted to say thanks for taking action on that, and that's going to be a really nice improvement to the city. So I'd rather be home with her this evening. She's not actually in there. That's a little prop. Actually here tonight to ask for some help. You might remember from back in the Broadstone days that my neighborhood, Bemis Street, has a little bit of a parking problem. That's a picture from down at the Rose Garden of the cars going all the way up the street. Today I actually counted 36 of them. One of them registered to a property owner on that street. So it's all light rail parking there. So coming back from the hospital on a weekday, we're like, are we going to be able to park in front of our house on this street? Are we going to have to carry this brand new baby all the way up? Luckily, we had some really thoughtful neighbors who made a cute little sign reserving a spot for us. And that's worked for a little while, but I knew I was going to need a little bit more help, so I've been talking to the city about how to get permit parking and was given this brochure outlining. And the three basic ways to establish a district are, I need longer arms here. Being near light rail, which you know Bemis Street is, having 75% of the people on the street petitioning for it, which I've done, and I'm having a minimum area of a city block. So here's a map of the block, and all of those orange homes signed my petition, which represents 85% of the neighborhood. So I sent that email over to the city to get this process started, and that was on August 5th. So as of now, still no permit parking, and I've been getting more and more impatient because this isn't working anymore. I'm afraid to leave my house. I might get to park when I come back. And if any of you would like to come up and lift this thing and see what it would be like to walk from the rose garden with a baby that's growing every day, it's quite a challenge. So anyway, what I've finally been told is that a new process is being invented, and I have to wait until this new process is finalized, which tonight is the first reading, October 21st would be the second, and then any amount of time from there. Meanwhile, it's been 9 weeks. August 5th is when I submitted that. We have the whole neighborhood, and we continue to have problems with people parking. You can see this vehicle parked even in the wrong direction of traffic. This vehicle parked on the sidewalk. I was out with my daughter in the stroller. I had to go out into the street. When you have dozens of cars parking on your street for light rail, you get issues. And so anyway, what I'm here asking tonight is for my request and my neighborhood's request to be put under the old ordinance of 2006, which we've already met all the requirements for. And really, shouldn't a process go from one into the other? And the earliest that the new process could be valid is October 21st. So why should my August 5th petition be made to wait until that second reading? I don't have any particular problem with the new ordinance, and I know tonight wouldn't be the time to comment on that, but I just think that being made to wait on that is unfair.
Question noted. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Doug? Thank you, Leah.
In the last issue of the Littleton Report, which came out last week, it says the Council's recent review of the city's projected 5-year budget deficit highlighted the need for revitalization of commercial centers and how urban renewal can support and improve sales tax revenue. The problem is that the 5-year budget forecast actually projects a surplus and not a deficit. The spreadsheet that's on the overhead comes from the 5-year budget forecast, and every single year in the forecast shows revenues exceeding expenditures. Furthermore, the fund reserve, or the surplus in the general fund, increases from $8.8 million to $10.6 million over the 6-year period that's in the 5-year budget forecast. And it's not just the Littleton Report. On the city's website in the finance department, when I went to look for the 5-year financial projection, what I saw instead was a narrative under the label of 5-year financial projection. In fact, it said 5-year financial projection reveals challenges And the quote is, long-term, however, the projections show that by 2019, the general fund will be depleted of revenue for capital projects at a time when the needs are expected to increase. Once again, what the report says is something different. As we saw in the previous chart, which is the city's chart from the 5-year budget forecast, the general fund actually has reserves at the end of 2019. What we see in this chart is that the fund balance for the capital project fund also at the end of 2019 has a reserve in it. In fact, it's $2.9 million, almost $3 million. In addition, while the website says that the capital needs are increasing, the top line in the chart, which is the expenditure on capital projects over the projected duration of the budget, actually shows it decreasing. And I would certainly hope that it would decrease, because after spending $10 million a year for 6 years on capital projects, I would think that you'd be running out of capital projects to do. So in summary, the connection that the Littleton report is trying to make is that there is a budget deficit in the 5-year projected budget, which is not true. So the city is going to use urban renewal to take tax revenue from Littleton Public Schools and South Suburban Parks and Recs and Arapahoe County and Urban Drainage and Flood Control to fix a revenue problem that your own 5-year budget projection actually shows doesn't exist. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Doug. And as you know, with tax increment financing, it does have to deal with an increment in taxes that ends up being shared. So, any other public comments? Yes, Betty.
Good evening, Council. I'm Betty Harris. I live in District 2. I was amazed to read in The Villager that there's a council member on the Littleton City Council who is attempting to personally profit from urban renewal, the same urban renewal that he will vote on as a council member. The Villager contains a letter from Jim Donnelly, who owns the Evergreen Motel, which is located on Santa Fe urban renewal area already approved by LIFT and the Planning Board. According to the letter, Mr. Stein called Mr. Donnelly and offered to buy Mr. Donnelly's property while claiming to have no knowledge that the property was blighted by LIFT. This is not the only situation involving conflict of interest on the part of this council member. There are 2 things wrong with this. First is that the council would claim to be experts on urban renewal while at the same time claiming to have no knowledge of the urban renewal plans. But the second and the most important thing is that a city council member would think that it's ethical to purchase property in an urban renewal area that they themselves are voting to blight. It's sad to think that Littleton has sunk so low that council members are attempting to personally profit from their own votes. No wonder there's an issue of lack of public trust.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none.
There is Pam.
Oh, Pam. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'm going to ask for the projector light. So I'm going to urge everybody just to remember what...
State your name, Pam.
Pam Chadbourne. I live at Crestline in Nevada in downtown District 1. I'd like everybody to remember what Betty just said. I think it's very important. Actually, I'm not sure. Ethics are good, and it's something I always thought we would have no problem with in Littleton. But beyond that, the conflict of interest... for me, it's a problem as a citizen. So I want to acknowledge that I heard something that was done in the past month or so. The city manager said that we're going to institute a help desk for developers and people who want to do work in Littleton. They get to walk in and talk to some specialists up front. They have that in Centennial. It works well. And I'm going to suggest to you, Councilmember Stein asked this question, I think, a couple weeks ago, why aren't developers coming to Littleton? Well, one of the reasons is that, because from the people I've heard who are in Englewood, we didn't have a good process that helped people who walked in to do development in Littleton for the past 10, 15 years. And during 2 of those years, council decided not to fill the position of community development director to save money. And that's the position that supervises that function. So it was a very weak function. It wasn't supported by council. Before that, I think that Jim Wood's regime didn't really support that either. And so the business person I know talked about this, said, nobody ever called me back. I couldn't get forms. I didn't know what to do. I wound up in Englewood. Maybe we fix that. And I'd like to point out to you the danger of solving the wrong problem. Urban renewal is proposed as a solution to why developers won't come to Littleton. I'm sure they will, because Denver is an expanding metro area. It may not be when you want it. It may not be when you're on council, but it will be in time for us, Littleton. And that's good for me and citizens. I think it's also good for developers. It will work. So, and especially if we fix our front desk problem. Let's say that maybe urban renewal is the wrong fix for the wrong problem, and that you're introducing problems by putting in the wrong fix. So I've suggested to you before that you're selling Littleton short, that for a short-term solution to a single issue, the city would like to implement a long-term risky approach without considering alternatives. And I believe that citizens, businesses, and the city's future will suffer. There's a better way. Build your confidence in Littleton. Use our team, all of us, citizens, not just developers, stakeholders. Build trust and negotiate with the developers, the people who want to take advantage of you. So my proposal about the process is what's happening, the second time you've heard it, sad, wasteful, unnecessary. All these steps that are X'd out are ones where we could have engaged the Historic Preservation Board, staff, citizens, businesses, visitors to the city, and planning board in determining what's great for us. And then integrate that into making the right size areas that we know will work. But there's no success scenario for us so far. I think you have 2 more months from the time that the thing is proposed to planning board to act. And so I'm suggesting let's try to get some of this engagement to right-size the areas and give a good technical basis for urban renewal. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else? Did I miss anyone this time? Okay. Seeing none at this point in time, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda items can be adopted by simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to vote on the motion, and any consent agenda item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a council member and will be considered after the consent agenda item is dealt with. Consent agenda item 6A is ordinance 25-2014. This is an ordinance on first reading, amending Title IX, Chapter 1 of the City Code pertaining to residential permit parking that was mentioned earlier, and sets a second reading for October 21st. Consent agenda item 6B is ordinance 34-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading approving a master agreement with KeyBank National Association. This replaces an agreement that had been in existence with Wells Fargo. Consent agenda item 6C is an ordinance 35-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading approving the rezoning of property known as Plum Valley Subdivision, lots 7-16 from PDX to PDC, Planned Development Commercial, and approving the Plum Valley Subdivision, lots 7-16, General Planned Development Plan, and schedules the second reading for October 21st. Consent agenda item 6D is an ordinance 36-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading amending Title 6, Chapter 11, Section 5 of the City Code pertaining to disbursement of funds from the Littleton Victim Assistance and Law Enforcement Program. This removes the percentages and allows for payment of that, and schedules the second reading for October 21. Consent agenda 6E is ordinance 37-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading establishing the tax levy of 6.62 mils, which is the existing mill levy, to defray the cost of municipal government of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1, 2015 and ending December 31, 2015.
I'd like to pull F, please.
Consent agenda item 6E is ordinance 38-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading to be known as the annual appropriation bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton.
You mislabeled that, it's F.
Oh, excuse me, it's 6F. So 6F is ordinance 38-2014. This is the ordinance on first reading to be known as the annual appropriation bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2015 and ending December 31, 2015. Consent agenda item 6G is resolution 108-2014. It's a resolution expressing the City Council's opposition to Amendment 68 pertaining to a question on the statewide ballot on November 4, 2014 that would expand casino gambling to horse racetracks. And for those interested that haven't read it, this is primarily based on the elimination of local control or local say with regard casino location. Consent agenda item 6H is resolution 109-2014. It's a resolution approving the 2015 operating plan and budget for the Highline Business Improvement District.
I'd like to pull that one.
Is that a poll?
Please.
Pull Bruce.
Sorry.
And then next is consent agenda item 6I, resolution 110-2014. It's a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the town of Columbine Valley, Arapahoe County, and the Colorado Department of Transportation to fund a preliminary traffic study on Platte Canyon Road. Consent agenda item 6J is resolution 112-2014, resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the School District Number 6, Arapahoe County, Colorado, doing business as Littleton Public Schools, and the City of Littleton regarding playground improvements and joint use of playground facilities at Centennial School of Fine Arts. And this provides the city funding of some of that construction. Consent agenda item 6K is ID 14-288 is a motion regarding a salary adjustment based on the city manager's 2014 performance evaluation. Consent agenda item 6L, ID 14-289, is a motion regarding expenditure of funds for economic development community meeting, possibly what Pam Chadbourne was talking about. This is to deal with city's revitalization. Looking for a motion for consent agenda items A, B, C, D, F, G,
Not
I,
F.
J,
Not F.
K.
Not F.
E, not F. Okay. Motion to approve consent agenda items A,
Hold
B.
it at the wrong section. Okay,
I apologize.
Okay, include 6E but not 6F. Okay. G.
Randy's pulling F. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. He's pulling F, not E. Okay, thank you. I, J, K, and L. Thank you.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Okay. Motion and second for consent agenda items. Council, please vote.
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
Thank you. Moving back to agenda item 6F, Councilmember Stein.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I'm cognizant of the fact that we have a busy night tonight in a busy room, so I'll be very brief. With due respect to the presenter, I felt that policy question 27B was perhaps not given its due, and I would like to request, first of all, that we ask the city manager for just a moment to come up and perhaps give us a slightly more filled-in overview of perhaps what we might hear more about. So I'd like to make a motion that we hear from that. On the bottom of page 1 of the legislation text, there appears the light item, reduce community development, paren 01-320-7430, close paren by $80,000, paren policy question number 27B, close paren for streetscape plan services. I'd like to remove that line item and to direct staff to proceed with an RFP and come back to council with a proposal and a plan, not a request. This is not a request for funds. I'm not requesting that council approve any funds at this point, merely just to allow staff to request an RFP and come back to us with a better overview of this policy matter. And if Mr. Penny might just take a moment to sort of fill in some of my rough blanks.
And I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, City Manager, comments?
Thank you, Mayor. So the policy question had been originally for $80,000 to do a streetscape plan for the downtown. And the intent in doing that streetscape plan is over the last probably year plus, as we have talked about the improvements to the downtown. You're all familiar with the downtown wayfinding program, which is approved in the budget. It became clear, at least from a staff perspective, that it would be good to have a master plan for the entire area of Main Street and ultimately Alamo. And when I say a master plan, what we're really talking about is the use of the public rights of way from property line to property line. Everything from what do we want the roadway to look like, to feel like, width of sidewalks. Right now we are a commuter roadway system right now for people getting east to west. Is that what the council continues to want from a downtown usage standpoint? Do we want to restrict parking? Do we want to restrict lanes in that area to try to push some of the commuter traffic north and south and free that up for more pedestrian usage? Councilmember Cole has talked about shuttle system in the area. Do we want to reduce parking and institute shuttle systems? What do we want to do around landscaping with the trees that are in the middle of the sidewalk and the edge of the sidewalk? Those trees are getting to their end of their useful life. You are all familiar with some of the trees we've already had to pull out in that area. So really an overall discussion around what we want to do in the downtown from the right-of-way. Wow. Speakers just got turned up. So that's what we had asked for, and ultimately I don't think the policy question was worded as clearly as it could have been, and Councilmember Stein had asked me to discuss a little bit more around what that would look like. And so my suggestion was that if you don't want to approve the funds right now, let us at least go out, do the RFP, and see what we get back from a response. You would be able to see then the full scope of service and what the cost of that service would be. And then you could appropriate the funds in 2015 if that's what you chose to do, or we could defer it to 2016. I know some of the concern for having a plan is, can you implement that plan? And it is potentially millions of dollars depending upon what the plan looks like. I mean, we're not just and when I say that, we're talking really about the roadway improvements, widening sidewalks, changing traffic layouts, those type of things. If we end up saying all we want to do is do some beautification, obviously we're not talking quite as much money, but ultimately I think having a plan in place, like any plan, helps us move forward as funding comes available. And yes, future councils may want to amend parts of that, but ultimately if we have an opportunity to do the plan, there's at least that roadmap for us to follow, so to speak. And the other thing it might do ultimately is give us an opportunity to engage with the downtown in a different fashion than how we've engaged in the past. Because right now it's been a little bit, as council's aware, a little bit head-to-head dealing with events, and this is not dealing with events. This is really dealing with the long-term vision of what we want our downtown to look like, and that is tied in with the merchants.
Are you comfortable moving ahead? Whoa. Are you comfortable moving ahead with the RFP process without modifying the appropriation bill?
I am indeed, yes. Yeah, and it would just need, obviously, we would return to you at the beginning of the year with that responses from the RFP, probably schedule it for a study session and have you guys could have an opportunity to discuss whether or not you wanted to bring in any of those firms for us to actually do the study itself.
Okay, looking for a motion on the ordinance for first reading and then scheduling the second reading.
I think Randy actually
I think I made
that motion.
Basically, I made the motion simply to eliminate this line item from, I guess I made the motion to eliminate the line item that I read from 6F, but to approve it without that line item. Is that inartfully phrased?
If the money isn't in there, and so if what you want to accomplish is direct staff to do an RFP, probably could leave the language alone and just have a motion to direct staff to do an RFP for the streetscape identified as policy question 27, then do a separate motion to approve the budget on first reading.
Okay, so I made the motion to direct staff. I guess we need a second motion to approve 6F.
Okay, second.
Bruce.
Oh, I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to direct on the RFP. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor with Councilmember Brickman voting no. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Council. Looking for a motion on the ordinance. Councilmember Stein?
I move to approve 6F as amended.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Any further discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Moving to item 6H, Councilmember Stallman.
Thank you. I was going to make an inquiry on a couple of the budget items that are embedded in the Highline Business Improvement District submission for 2015. Do we have anybody here tonight representing the district? The question I had was on, I guess it's page 2 of the budget. It looks like it's page 16 of the packet. And when you scroll down to, this is actually in the, let's go back. It's the 2015 Highline Business Improvement District Operating Plan and Budget piece of the packet on 6H. Waiting for people to get there. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the last one. And if you go down to, let me see here, go down to page 16 of the packet. There's 2 items at the bottom of the expenditures for 2015. There's a dissolution reserve for $25,000, and there's a contingency for $66,000. So essentially $91,000 that doesn't really have any parallel going back in time. It does, in 14 in the budget, there was a $31,000 contingency, but I was wondering if we had any indication from them as to what those numbers represented. And then I guess on page 18, the money from the Mission Hills Church is essentially shown also as a contingency / obligation payment. Didn't see a lot of explanation of those, so from a due diligence perspective, I just wanted to see if we could get, if staff knows, that's great. Otherwise, I guess I'd move to table this for 2 weeks and let them come back and address it then.
I can answer the second question. I can answer the second question. I don't know about the first question.
Please.
Because Mission Hills is a nonprofit. They're not required to provide the essentially property tax assessment into the business district, but as good neighbors, they contribute that. That's why it's noted as a contingency rather than a requirement, because it's not a required contribution on their part.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I recall that from past couple of years when they've agreed to do this, but I guess I was wondering, do we have visibility to what they do with that contingent? Is it debt service, or are they doing something else?
That part I don't know.
Yeah, that was what I was curious about as far as where it was going.
I'm imagining it goes into, if they have a general fund equivalent, that's where they put it. So
yeah, okay, all right.
It's just considered as a property owner, their participation.
No, that I appreciate.
But it's not something they can put a lien on the property for.
Right.
Recover.
It's a separate fund, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, no, okay. Any?
Nope.
No, okay.
No, I think on the mayor's response, my recollection from, because we've asked that same question before, and I believe they use it for maintenance as part of the voluntary agreement on the payment for it, but we do not know dissolution reserve and contingency. So,
all right.
And I would suggest if council can approve it, we can get the response back, because you have the option to approve or request for more information. And so if council can approve, we're already past the statutory timeline from when they submitted the budget to us. So it would be helpful if we could get this completed, and then we'll ask them for a written response to your questions.
I don't know. If we're already past time, I guess my preference would be to get the answers and then go ahead and bless it if that's not going to cause major headaches.
That's up to the council.
Okay. So I would move that we table this until October 21st and request the follow-on information from the board.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Discussion, council? Seeing none. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor with Mayor Cernanek voting no. The motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. And now we move on to ordinances for second reading and public hearing. We're going to move to ordinance 7B. It's ordinance 32-2014, which is an ordinance on second reading approving a software maintenance and support agreement between the city and CRW Systems, Inc. for maintenance and support services of permit and code enforcement software. Director Price.
Good evening, Council. In 2005, the city procured licenses for a software package called Trackit from CRW, Inc. Every year, we have been paying an annual renewable maintenance contract on that software. Over that length of time, we've experienced variable increases as far as percentages. For example, since 2010 through 2014, we've averaged about a 4% increase in that cost every year. What you see before you is an agreement, a 5-year agreement that starts in 2015 and will go to 2019, and it will lock in a 2.5% increase in that maintenance over that 5-year period. Are there any questions?
Council?
Ken, that's 2.5% per year for 5 years.
Correct.
Further discussion? Council? Looking for a motion?
Thank you.
Motion that the ordinance approving the software maintenance and support agreement between the city and CRW Systems, Inc. for maintenance and support services for permit and code enforcement software be approved on second reading.
Second.
I'm going to back up. I forgot. I should have opened the public hearing and looking for the sign-up sheet. So if you can suspend that motion for the moment.
Unsecond.
Unmotioned.
Thank you. Can we see the roster? Doug, bring them both.
Does not appear we have any. We'll get for the next public hearing.
Okay, you might want to retrieve that now.
They're working on it.
Okay. Open the public hearing. There's no one on the roster. Would anyone wish to speak with regard to the ordinance on the software maintenance and support agreement? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Now looking for a motion.
Motion that the ordinance approving the software maintenance and support agreement between the city and CRW Systems, Inc. for maintenance and support services for permit and code enforcement software be approved on second reading.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and second. Additional discussion on the part of council? Seeing none, council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. Motion carries.
Thank you, council. Now we move to agenda item 7A, ordinance 30-2014, which is an ordinance on second reading approving the rezoning of property known as 101 West Jameson Avenue from PD Plan Development District to PD-R Plan Development Residential District and approving the Jameson Village General Planned Development Plan. Director Van Nimwegen.
Mayor, what I gave you was the sign-up sheet. Also, pay attention to the back because we did run out of space, so there are folks that have written on the back of a couple of those pages. Also, I gave you the official exhibits for the case, just to move this along. So the property we're talking about is 3 acres that's located on the north side of Jameson Avenue, just east of Broadway Road. In the past, it's really the historical use of the site has been an equipment yard or equipment maintenance facility, first for Denver Water, and then South Suburban Parks and Recreation took it over and probably operated there for the longest period of time. Roughly about 2011, they desist the use of the site, and the property's been up for sale since then. This is how the project appeared when it was presented to the Planning Commission in August. Just roughly, it's 38 units on, again, 3 acres for an overall density of about 12.7 units per acre. The project has 38.5% open space. And what these are is duplexes or paired units with the front door really on open space or out onto Jameson Avenue, and the garages are in the back that are accessed from an alley. There are 2 points of access, but the easternmost access point is really a fire access only. So they did have to provide 2 driveways out onto Jameson Avenue, but for all intents and purposes, the day-to-day driveway will be the westernmost access point. We did analyze the traffic report because the street is really built as a collector roadway for densities that are adjacent. The bottom line of the traffic report was there's really not substantial number of trips to require additional roadway improvements from what's provided. So at the Planning Board on August 25th, 2014, we heard a number of concerns from the adjacent residents. I'm sure you'll hear them again tonight. And there were a number of concerns that related to the percent open space as well as the setbacks. I'll show you in my next slide as far as what the exhibits or what the setbacks are approved for the adjoining properties, the Stone Ridge townhouses, and what's proposed here. But ultimately, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the case with additional setbacks. So the north property setback was changed from 10 feet to 15 feet, and the side yards on the east and west were changed from 8 feet to 10 feet. So overall, when you compare the development standards from the adjoining townhouses, that's what this table is showing you. So I think as far as density, we're pretty consistent. The densities range from 11 units per acre up to 13.7 units per acre. Tonight we're proposing 12.7 units per acre. Again, it's 38 units. One difference is in the building height. They are allowed in the Southbridge townhouses to go up to 35 feet in height, and the developer here is recommending that only 30 feet in height be allowed. Again, the building setbacks for the approved Southbridge plan developments have 20 feet all the way around, except for the front yard on Jameson, which is 30 feet. And what's proposed here is less than that, with 15 feet on the north, 10 feet on the east and west, and 15 feet on the front. I think one of the concerns that was raised at the planning board meeting had to do with open space. And I think when you go back to the exhibit I first showed you, what this is depicting is a bird's eye view with the roof covering up a good portion of the open space. So if you look at this and say, well, how do you get 40% open space out of that? I think we clarified that quite a bit when we had the developer take another look at it. And again, per our zoning code, you can include backyards, private side yards as open space. So they did quite a comprehensive analysis of all those areas, what's public open space and what's private open space. And they even went to the degree of making sure that driveways are not included in that, because I think that was a concern that was raised at the planning board. So again, we've looked at the numbers again. We still are confident that we're at 38% open space, but that includes private and public open spaces. And when you look at the project next door, there really is not a private open space. There are small patios in front of the units, but there are not backyards, side yards as proposed here. So when we look at the citywide plan, I just wanted to hit a couple of the goals of the citywide plan. Number 1.1 is to generate more opportunities for residents to live, shop, and play, and then flip that around, and then also work, shop, and play where they live. And I think I'll show you an exhibit that shows the amount of employment that's around this area, the amount of retail uses. So again, this is a good infill site that I believe meets this goal of the citywide comprehensive plan. 1.6 talks about providing new types of housing that meets current demands. This is a very different project than, well, not that different from the adjacent Southbridge area. It's the right density, but in this case, we're trading out public open space for private rear yards for folks, and they're only attached on one side. If you took our current project and you pushed 8 units together, or 6 units or 4 units, similar to the project next to you, I think you would have something that's very similar to what's around it, but again, I don't think we're providing that variety that's recommended per the comprehensive plan. Then you drill down a little bit deeper into the South Neighborhood Plan, and there's a number of goals here. Really, I think all 3 of these goals have to do with buffering industrial and commercial uses from the existing residential and keeping industrial traffic off of the local streets. And I think we're doing that purely by the change in use. So we're taking industrial use away and we're moving residential into this infill site. In land use policy number 3, the second sentence that says, again, we shouldn't have any commercial or industrial uses on the north side of Jameson, east of Broadway Road. And again, we're, by the change in use of this site, we're bringing this property in compliance with this goal of the neighborhood plan. And that residential development in the area provide a mix of housing types in a manner that preserves and enhances the character, and that was stated twice, I guess, just to emphasize it, of the existing residential areas. And I think that's basically your question before you tonight. So we're very similar in setback or in density, but it is a very different product. And I think you'll have a range of opinions of whether it complements the existing neighborhood or not. So in just kind of looking at the area, and I'm sure you're familiar with the land uses, you have the hospital on the east side of Broadway Road, certainly as an employment center. You have the Safeway Shopping Center directly to the south of the project for retail. And South Park in general is a large employment area. And then I took a look at just some of the densities. So We have the apartments directly to the west of the retail. That's roughly 14.5 units per acre. And then you have the Stonebridge townhouses that range in density of 11 to 13 units per acre. And this project's right in the middle at 12.7. And you certainly have lower density as you move into Stonebridge of right about 3 units per acre. So it's not an unusual transition in density to the retail and employment areas in the city. So with that, the staff is recommending approval because it is in compliance with the city's comprehensive plan. It's in conformance with the intent of our planned development district, and it promotes the general welfare of the community. And I think principally it's because we're removing that non-conforming use and we're providing a residential use in a residential neighborhood. On August 25th, as I mentioned before, the Planning Board recommended in favor by a vote of 4-3, and that included the additional setbacks that I stated earlier. Staff is also in approval of those recommended changes, so we stand with the Planning Board as far as recommending approval. And also, as you've seen in your packet, we got a number of letters mostly against the proposed project, some for, but utilizing our charter section 37, we do have a requirement that there's more than 20% of the folks within 100 feet that are against the proposed project. So that means we need a minimum of 5 votes of council for approval. So with that, Mayor and Council, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from Council?
Bruce? Glenn, help me maybe potentially refresh my memory. While you were talking, it sort of on the open space issue, it sort of triggered a thought. A project like Marathon, which is, I don't know what that was, 77 acres or some such number, which is an extensive PD overlay kind of project, clearly needs to have contextualized open space included in it. This being an infill project within the parameters of an existing subdivision totaling 3 acres, why would we not consider the existing open space that borders the entire area? So, for example, that entire open space area north of Jameson, west of Broadway, up to the YMCA. Help me understand how we would think about that in terms of the 38% or the 40% number you were talking about.
Excuse me, Council. Just for the benefit of comparing apples to apples, we always provide an open space on site versus going out, and I think what you're recommending is going out a walkable distance and see what open space is available in the community. Is that what you're suggesting? Mm-hmm. We typically don't do that so that you can compare that this project meets the standards of the zoning code. And in this case, it recommends 25% open space, so we can tell you that it exceeds on this site the code required open space. Now, as far as connections, which is something I didn't really get into from the comprehensive plan, you have great access to other open space, the Highline Canal trails, and those sorts of things as well. So,
I mean, when we looked at other projects of this nature, again, I guess the thing that strikes me is just being a 3-acre site in this particular location with existing residential pretty much surrounding it. Is there anything wrong with thinking that the connectivity and the proximity to other open spaces is not at least contributing at some level, even if it's not specifically on site? It's pretty proximate, isn't it?
Right. Right, and I think that's why staff was in favor of perhaps a smaller setback so that those open spaces on site at least can be more usable. So because it's an infill site and has a lot of grade issues, you're right, there's development constraints. So I think that is maybe a justification for a change in the setbacks as well.
Okay, thank you.
Peggy?
Yeah, could you go back to the map, the layout?
this work.
So you said this is what was presented to the planning board.
No, ma'am.
Okay, I misunderstood.
The earlier one was.
The earlier one. Okay.
This is what was presented to planning board.
Okay, so then I'm trying to keep that one here. So then go to the other one. So help me with the space that's more usable now.
Well, one thing, the first exhibit I showed you showed everything under roof. So really, when you measure setbacks, open space, it's up to foundation. So this is showing you the actual foundations.
So, so is there more space actually, or just we're seeing it differently?
You're just seeing it.
Okay, so
You're seeing it better on this exhibit than the previous one.
So my question is the right one then. Okay, so if the planning board essentially saw this, but a little covered up, but we're increasing the setbacks, where is the increase showing up?
Where's the decrease happening inside the site? Some of the spaces in between the units got narrower. That's how, because everything is kind of pushing in. So some of the open spaces in the center got narrower. Like the open space spine down the middle of the project.
Well, wouldn't they get wider if the space get wider if you had to increase from 10 to 15 feet and 15 to 20 or whatever?
Along the perimeter it does, yes, but it pushes those units in, I guess is what I was stating.
So how big is that perimeter?
The width of it, I think, is about 50 feet in the center, that center spine.
Oh, that's the spine, but the perimeter you just said.
Oh, it's that building setback of, now I forget, it was 15 on the north and 10 on the sides.
Okay, so it just looks small because it's a little bitty picture there. Right? I mean, I'm trying to visualize people using that space for national night out parties or neighborhood potlucks or things like that. So you're saying that that will be usable space?
Are you talking around the perimeter? Not necessarily. I think what the additional setbacks actually on the east and west are larger side yards for those units. That isn't public space. That dark green would be within somebody's fenced yard.
So the light green's not usable?
The light green would be your public space.
So it is usable?
So it is usable, and absolutely, and it's in the front doors, by the front doors, which is where you want people interacting.
Okay, I mean, I'm just trying to get a handle on whether space is useful or it's a nuisance and you've got to cut it, but you can't do anything with it. So that was not said friendly, but I'm trying to get a handle on that. So I think you answered what I was asking.
I hope so. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Beckman.
I've got two questions. One is just because I'm curious about our involvement so far. That was used as a service center, basically, for Denver Water and for South Suburban. What is done about checking for contamination and those kinds of things? I know they did at one time have tanks there, et cetera.
Right. I believe the applicant, if he hasn't done one already, has done a phase one for environmental issues. That's a standard step in purchase of property. He can probably speak to the findings of that. If it has serious contamination, I don't think they would necessarily go ahead with the sale, but I believe they've done their due diligence and they can give you a report on that.
And my second question, tell me how we arrived at locking an entrance and exit and saying that we would use it for fire trucks only. I'm thinking of police cars. I'm thinking of other kinds of moving vans, things that can't turn around, and they need to be able to make it in and make it out.
Right. I think part of the conflict was the proximity of the two driveways perhaps doesn't meet our best standard for public works because they're too close together. So the idea was provide a Knox gate so fire can hit a clicker and basically open that gate, and same with police. So for emergency, they can get in there. For a moving situation where somebody's got a moving van, I believe the HOA could probably open that gate, but again, I think from a public works standpoint, we wanted to limit the amount of access points on the Jameson, so that's how this decision was arrived at.
Thank you.
You brought up one other issue, which I didn't necessarily see in the documents, Glenn, which is, will there be an HOA established, and will that be part of the covenants on the property?
Yes, I'm sure they are planning an HOA. I think they may have actually talked to the adjoining HOA about perhaps being included within the Southbridge Townhouse, but again, we're far away from a decision on that.
Okay. Other questions, discussion? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Director.
Thank you.
I forgot to ask Glenn, is the applicant looking to make any presentation?
I'm sure they are. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm Gary Wenger. I'm part of the development team. I'm president of Stone Ridge Homes. And if I would allow me to pass out some other exhibits that I don't think are part of your packet. So if you bear with me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Could I have this, whatever this is called? So I'll use some of that for my exhibits. Thank you. I'm going to try to be brief because I know there's a lot of people who want to speak tonight, but I'm mainly going to try to address some of the concerns that we've heard from letters that have been written, phone calls we've received, and some of the comments of the Planning Commission. But I do want to take a few more minutes just to highlight some of the things that Glenn talked about. This was the current site when it was in use by South Suburban. They have operated for well over 30 years, and like Glenn said, they decided to quit using it as a maintenance facility in 2011. And that's when South Suburban decided to put it on the market. My partners and I put this under contract in November of 2012, and we've been working with the Planning Commission, looking at various options and various scenarios, and what you saw presented by Glenn is what we came up with. South Suburban does not intend to develop this into a park, and I'm going to take a minute to read a letter which is in your packet that was sent to me by the Executive Director of South Suburban, David Lorenz, and I will just read it. I want to confirm in writing to you our previous conversation regarding development of the Jameson site. South Suburban has absolutely no interest in developing the site as a park. We believe there are sufficient open space, Horseshoe Park, Parkland, Southbridge, and trail corridors, Lee Gulch and Highland Canal in the area. I have expressed our opinion to the local homeowners association representatives who have called on several occasions over the past couple of years asking about the potential for a park on the vacated Jameson site. We are very supportive of your proposed plan for development of the site. We believe is a good land use within the city of Littleton. And I read this because some of the people who may speak tonight still are in hopes of making this into a park, and it's our belief that South Suburban not only does not have the financing to do it and just doesn't have the inclination to do it. The buildings that you see on the site, the one up at the top of the page, and then there's one kind of on the left on the west side. They're no longer maintained. In fact, our environmental investigation that you asked about earlier, we did a phase 1 and a phase 2. And our environmental investigation found out that there is large amounts of asbestos in these buildings, as well as contaminated soils with some levels of petroleum. And we've had several bids from contractors, and we feel that cleanup is about a $200,000 bill that we'll be absorbing as part of our development. So what we have here, in our opinion, is a contaminated, abandoned site that continues to be an eyesore for a lot of people who drive up and down the street. We think our rezoning will be an upgrade and will clean up the contamination, and we think it'll be more compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods. As Glenn stated, and I'm just going to kind of rehash what he talked about, we are in compliance with the city's comprehensive zoning plan. We are in compliance with the city's open space requirements. We have similar density to that of the surrounding neighborhoods. The Planning Commission that requested that we change our setbacks on our north and south property lines. And I'll just show this one more time. There were some questions. Almost a two-man show here. But anyways, like Glenn talked about, on the north side, which is the top of the page, when we presented to the Planning Commission, that was a 10-foot buffer, if you would, to the property line. Now it is 15 feet. On the east and west, they were 8. They are now 10. And on the south, up against Jameson Avenue, they were 10. They are now 15. And that's a little misleading because our property is actually 13 feet from Jameson Avenue. So really, you're 28 feet from Jameson Avenue to the front of those buildings. I just wanted to reiterate that. Just it looks a little tighter than it really is in reality. The product on our site will be built and marketed by KB Home. They are one of our partners in this venture. KB Home has successfully built this product in several other locations around the Denver metropolitan area. Corey Hunsinger of KB Home is going to talk briefly after I've concluded. These homes will be a for-sale product that will appeal, in our opinion, to a wide range of buyers. I want to take the majority of my time to talk about some of the concerns that some of these citizens have in back of me here. Our development in no way will affect the current HOA dues of any of the surrounding communities. We will be totally responsible for all of the costs of the infrastructure on our site. Any damage that may occur to existing fencing, retaining walls, or landscaping will be our responsibility. We have reached out to the homeowners association. We do not intend to be part of their homeowners association. We will form our own homeowners association to take care of our landscaping maintenance and snow removal and maintenance of those private drives that you see there. Those are not public streets. Those are all private drives. Our product will have an average selling price of $350,000. The average selling price of our neighbors in the townhome community is $250,000. We feel confident that our higher priced product will have a positive, not a negative effect on the home values of our neighbors. This has come up repeatedly that they feel like we are going to damage the home values by putting this more expensive product in there. I want to put another slide out here because this north area of our property seems to be a major concern. And I want to, this slide superimposes the South Suburban buildings. We superimpose our buildings on top of their buildings. So again, if you could just direct to the top of the page of the north there, you can see where that building on the north is. That current building that you're looking at there is 160 feet long. It's 17 feet high. Our product will have 16-foot breaks in between those three buildings. So, in our opinion, we're going to be letting a lot more sunlight and light into that north property than is currently there. Let me have one more slide here that might depict that a little better. Again, this wasn't, I don't know if this got into your packet. This slide shows what those current north homeowners are looking at. And we've superimposed our product down at the bottom. You can see the relationship of our height to their front doors. And we feel it's maybe a little closer to the north boundary line that's currently there with that 160-foot building, but certainly doesn't have the negative effect, in our opinion, that would decrease values to anybody in the project. I want to show you some pictures that we took of that north side. The part on the left where that retaining wall is and those evergreen trees, that is our north boundary. Those evergreen trees and that existing fence are actually on the townhome property. And in our opinion, they act as a great buffer. No matter what we do on our property, we're not changing the fence that's on their property. We're not removing any evergreens. We will probably landscape on our property, which will further enhance the buffer, in our opinion. And I got one more slide showing that from the other direction. This is looking from the west to the east. Again, that same north property line. You know, as Glenn has stated, no infill developments are going to be different than a 20-year-old product. Current economic conditions, government regulations, building codes, environmental concerns, they all dictate a newer, different, fresher-looking product. And we feel it's going to be a great addition to the city of Littleton, and we would like an opportunity to develop the site. So I'm concluded, and I want Corey to talk a little more in depth about the product. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wanger.
Well, good evening. Corey Hunsitter, representing KB Home, 7807 East Peakview Avenue in Centennial. Thanks for this opportunity to briefly describe our paired home product this evening. I'll do my best not to repeat anything that's already been said here tonight. We are very proud of this product. We have built it successfully in 6 different communities throughout Metro Denver over the past several years, including some very popular master plans, Stapleton in Denver, the Belmar redevelopment in Lakewood, as well as the Meridian Village master plan in Parker. KB Home is a national leader in green residential construction, offering a variety of energy and water-saving features in the homes we build, and every home we build in Colorado is Energy Star certified. Our paired homes are really sort of a hybrid between townhomes and traditional single-family developments, offering some of the affordability and low maintenance of a townhome, while also allowing buyers to have a small side yard, windows on 3 sides of the units, and also options to expand up to 4 bedrooms. We found these private side yards particularly really appealing to our buyers. They appreciate the fact that they can have a small patio to entertain guests with outdoor dining, have barbecues, without all of the maintenance and water in a traditional single-family detached lot. I'm going to put some... We do build this craftsman elevation, which you see shown here for Meridian Village as well as Stapleton on the upper right. And we've also applied a more modern facade where appropriate at communities in Belmar and the Arista development up in Broomfield. We originally did also propose a craftsman elevation at Jamison Village. However, after staff had visited some of our other product that we'd built in Stapleton, they felt that this prairie elevation really was more compatible with the Southbridge neighborhood and really Littleton itself. We also, at staff's request, have some regard for 4-sided architecture in these products from what we originally submitted. If you can see, it's a little hard to reach, but we've added some pop-outs on the side elevations, also extended some of the materials from the front facade to the side of the building, and added some windows to be a little more appealing on the rear elevations as well. As for the homes themselves, all plans are two-story product, alley loaded with two-car attached garage, which loads from the rear from a private driveway. All 4 proposed plans range in size from 1,450 to 1,700 square feet. And then we also have a variety of structural options in addition to the finish options that most builders offer, where you can add granite or a hardwood floor, where we allow the buyer to add a bedroom, add a loft, add a den to the plan, which grows our largest plan up to about 1,900 square feet. We also have the opportunity, and we plan to offer basements if the site conditions allow for it, which would add another 600 to 700 square feet of unfinished square feet in the basement. Again, depending on the buyer choices on room configurations and that sort of thing, we offer 2 to 4 bedrooms in these plans. All plans include a 2.5 bathrooms, which includes a master suite upstairs, secondary bathroom upstairs as well, and then a powder bath on the main floor. And if I could just touch on some of the buyers that we typically see at our paired home product, about 70% of our buyers are 1 and 2 person households, but those vary really quite widely across income ranges, age groups, and family types. We have singles and couples, both with and without children, that purchase our homes. And we also have a large contingent of move-down buyers, The 50-plus buyer has comprised about a third of our buyers in a lot of our communities. And based on our initial interest here at Jameson Village, we expect that to be a strong component of our buyers as well here. Since we started posting notices for the public hearings, we've been getting a lot of phone calls. And a lot of them are for people that already live in Southbridge that are looking for a low-maintenance product to downsize into. What initially attracted us to the area is the large number of employers in the area, CenturyLink, Littleton Adventist Hospital, and some of the other large employers in South Park Business Center. And we really feel that will also be a strong buyer pool for us, with people being attracted by the opportunity to either bike or walk to work as well. So we're excited about this opportunity to build some affordable new homes in Denver, and look forward to moving forward with this project. And if there's any questions you might have pertaining to product, I'll be available for the rest of the proceedings.
Council, any questions at this time? Okay, thank you, Corey. We will open the public hearing for this. I've gone through the roster very briefly. Those folks indicating they did not desire to speak. 26 oppose the motion to be considered tonight, or the rezoning, and 4 are in favor. So I'll leave that as a number. There are several folks that did not indicate whether they would want to speak or not, so I will read their names. They may or may not have indicated in favor or not. I will read one name, and then we'll read a second so that someone knows if they're on deck, they can begin to approach, and we are limiting comments to 4 minutes each. Okay, Council? Okay. First name is Gordon Orwig, and I may not have had the second name correct. Gordon? And then next up is Michael Gess, G-O-E-S-S. So you're on deck.
Well, my question would be is, how's this going to affect me? I live right on the north side of this development. How long is the building going to last? How much dirt's going to be blowing around? And how long will it take to complete?
That's it?
That's it?
Okay. We'll let the applicant note that, and maybe they can have an opportunity to answer that later. Michael, and then next is Martin Kay.
Thanks for the opportunity. I am a Southbridge property owner, but I am not living adjacent to the proposed development, so I'm not directly affected by any of the impacts. I do think, however, it's appropriate that the council revisit the question of the setbacks. I fail to see any reason why the setbacks for this property should be any less than the setbacks for the townhomes in which we're all living. I think by increasing the setbacks to match those already existing, you'll provide more privacy for the existing homeowners, more privacy for the new homeowners, and more opportunity for landscaping opportunities to protect both sites in terms of their integrity. I also confess that I'm a bit confused about the open space, how 38% open space, which at one time included driveways, now becomes 38% open space, but doesn't include the driveways. And the property hasn't gotten any larger, so I'd like to have more clarification done on exactly what open space exists, how it was calculated, and whether or not it's in conformity with the Littleton building requirements. I have two other issues, both of which I think are probably inappropriate for the council. One has to do with making sure that there is adequate storm drainage on the property to prevent those living downhill from this, in other words, on the north side and then across Jamison Circle, from being negatively affected by storm overflow and runoff. And then finally, I would ask that the council, if it's within the purview of the council, request that the developer provide some concrete information on what their intentions would be to improve the privacy and breakout between the existing properties and the new properties under development. I was pleased to hear that they are at least considering adding additional trees to the north, east, and west sides of the property, which I think will go a long way to assuaging the anxiety of the people living on those sides now. But I think anything the council can do to encourage that on the part of the developer would be greatly appreciated. I think the buildings are appropriate for the neighborhood. I think the price point for the units will, in fact, enhance property values, because I think that anytime you can have the least expensive unit in an expensive area, you are, in fact, going to benefit by increasing property values. And I think it's a very appropriate and well-designed project and would support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Martin, and then on deck is Diana Olson.
Thank you. Martin K., 301 West Jamison Place, Unit 10 in Littleton. I really appreciate what South Suburban Parks and Recreation has done in closing down their maintenance yard and in encouraging the development of this property. I appreciate what Stonebridge and KB Homes are doing in developing the property. I do have serious concern, though, about the proposed development. I'm going to stand by my written statement, which I think is included in your packet. I have two primary concerns. One is inadequate setbacks. It's infill property. I appreciate that. But there's no reason to have setbacks that are diminished from what would normally be required, especially when the property is at an elevation of 6 to 12 foot higher than our existing townhomes. It's as if the new development will be looming over us, and adequate setbacks would help preserve the privacy and the sunlight to the existing homeowners. Especially, I want to emphasize that when it's at altitude, that requires additional setbacks, not diminished setbacks. This is the first opportunity I've had. Can I get this back on the overhead?
There you are.
This is the first opportunity I've had to see this page. I don't see the driveways that lead into the garages. They appear to be in green and therefore counted as open space, which doesn't make sense to me. The municipal code specifically excludes driveways used for for vehicle access from open space. In addition, I continue to believe that side yards, if they're enclosed by 6-foot privacy fences, should not be included in open space for the reasons in my written statement. And I suggest that the council may want to obtain a legal opinion from city attorney on that issue. In general, 38 units in 3 acres may have a similar density in terms of unit per acre, but because these buildings are much larger, they have a much larger footprint. And planning board staff gave me the figure that the footprint was much larger than the footprint of the surrounding homes, and I think that's a more relevant comparison. If you're going to be walking through this development, you're going to see driveways and you're going to see privacy fences and homes. You're not going to see a lot of what we think of as open space. And 38 homes put into 3 acres is cramming a lot of homes in a small area. It's incompatible with the open feeling of the surrounding neighborhood with broad swaths of grass and lawn separating our units. Any questions? I think I've got a half minute left.
Yeah, no question, Martin. Just a clarification. I believe the driveways are noted in brown on that map and are not included in the open space calculation. They're very short components, and they may not show up well in the color, but the driveways are actually brown and not included in the open space.
I can see it on the computer screen. I couldn't see it on the overhead.
Just that was the one answer, and I'll leave it to the applicants to address the others.
I'd love to have copies of that page for me to look over.
That'll be their request. Thank you.
If you would consider that. Thank you.
Okay, Diana? And then on deck is Bill Hales.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just want to put
Diana,
something...
just state your own name.
I'm sorry, Diana Olson. I just need to put something on the overhead. This is a site map of our property. And so if you look at our winding streets and all of our open space, you can see that their development equals almost the open space, the amount of open space that we have, their entire development. That dark area on the left is their development. And so when you zoom in to this, that shows what we had compared to what our neighborhood is like. And so this is going to be very, very dense and very high. And they showed you pictures of all of the bushes and trees along. Most of those bushes and trees are on their property. So when they build, that's going to come down. So that buffer, we have a few trees along there, but that buffer is going to come down. And as far as open space for them to meet, that corner, that green spot up in that corner, they're going to put a retention pond in there. And I don't know if it's going to be above ground or below ground, but that's going to take out whatever open space they really do have, especially if they have fences. And I read the environmental reports. There are toxic chemicals on that property, and it will be the responsibility of South Suburban to clean up because it's from cradle to grave, whoever owns the land. And so I can't remember if I mentioned arsenic, but arsenic is in there too. And a lot of this came from the dry cleaner that's up the hill at the shopping center up there. A lot of their hazardous materials washed down onto that property. So, and they couldn't test the groundwater because there was nothing in the wells. So the groundwater hasn't been tested. So I just think that, the density, I hope, we're not opposed to a development on this property as long as it is developed responsibly and doesn't loom over us. And they talk about, being on their front patios and providing a place for people. They're going to be seeing our driveways on this side, and they're going to be looking onto our patios on the front. So people are going to be having dinner. And I think the way that our developer planned it is so that people would have, offsets and some privacy. And I just don't see it in there. So I don't think they'll have any amenities. Oh, and the staff recommendation of the planning board mentioned that there is a sewer outlet on that upper northeast corner, but that outlet belongs to us. That land does not drain through that sewer line. That is on our property because Mr. Wenger and a couple of our past board members went and looked at that, and that is on our land, and it drains our property. I don't know how their property drains, but if it drains through there, it's going to add, because right now when it rains really hard, the water just goes shooting out the pipe and across the sidewalk into the street, and then it washes down. So, and they said that this is all right now covered with asphalt and concrete, and I don't believe it is. I think there's a lot of open ground there, so it absorbs a lot of water. So when it is covered with asphalt and buildings, I just don't see where the stormwater is going to go. So.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Bill, and then on deck is Kathleen Swanson.
William Hales, 231 West Jameson, number 18. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I have been in Littleton residence since 1978. This is our fourth location in the city of Littleton, and I just had a couple of short comments. First of all, doesn't affect city council, but as citizens, we passed a tax on ourselves for open space, and a lot of us feel betrayed by South Suburban for leaving this mess behind and not taking care of it themselves, leaving that responsibility to future property owners. It's not a good way for government to behave. So that betrayal aside, I commend Stonebridge and KB Homes for the plans they've come up with, except for the fact that this property is on a very high plateau, and those houses will indeed be dominant over the houses in Southbridge, townhouses. So that issue's already been addressed. I won't dwell on it. My last comment deals with the fact that you as city fathers need to do what's right and needed by the city, for and by the city. I can speak from firsthand experience this year in that we just moved a couple of months ago, and in so moving, we are pre-baby boomers. We are 1 year ahead of the baby boom, and they've been pushing us along through education, through minivans, whatever trend you've picked out for the last probably 40 or 50 years. We've been kind of right in front of it, and it's kind of been washing over us. And right now, we are downsizing. We moved into Southbridge Homes to downsize. We needed a main floor bedroom. We wanted to get rid of the gardening and all the things that we've had in our homes to date. But the city does not have adequate homes available for baby boomers who are needing to downsize. We need those main floor bedrooms with full baths. We need that main floor on ground level so we can get in and out without encountering a lot of stairs. So I would encourage the city to maybe relook at what's in front of you, and perhaps Stonebridge can work out something in their plans, and make some of these units compatible for this glaring need in the city of Littleton. We found a unit, but there's only been 2 of that type listed for sale since last February in the city of Littleton. We didn't want to move anywhere else. My wife and I got I Love You Littleton matching T-shirts in the 1970s, and we've used them ever since. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill. Kathleen Swanson. And on deck is Terry Keegan.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Kathleen Swanson. I live at 230 West Jamison Circle, number 31, and you should have a letter from me in your packet. You'll have to indulge me. I work with preschoolers all day long, so I wanted to bring a visual. So I didn't bring a baby because I don't have any babies. But I wanted to bring a visual about how far this is going to be from my front porch.
You're now complicit.
Do I have to recuse myself?
So that's from my front porch to about where the fence line is. So as you can see, it's not very far. Thank you.
Pleasure.
The reason I moved into this area was for security and safety. I am a single person, and I did want to be able to live someplace where I felt comfortable. This is a picture, if we can get that up.
Have it face you. There you go.
This is a picture of where I live, and it's kind of dark to see, but on the left-hand side, that's where the fence line is, so you can see how close I sit to that. And this is a picture of our wonderful front yard, which we currently have, which is totally fenced. And so we have a very lovely private area that we're able to use. Our patios face that green space. So it makes a really nice family-oriented place or a place to have friends over and to use our front yards. I spent some time on Sunday, during the Bronco game. And I talked with neighbors, and these are 19 additional signatures of people that are not in favor of the development as it is proposed. What we're concerned about and what I'm concerned about on my side of the property, because I live on the east side, is the proposal for the water and sewer drainage. We don't know too much about how that's going to work. I would appreciate not having my privacy fence taken down. I do not particularly want to look at the side of a house, which is what I will do now if this is agreed upon. And I have a gorgeous view of the mountains from my house, and I will no longer be able to see that. It will be the side of a house, and it will be roofs. So I think our concern is that, yes, we are very happy that this is going to be developed. But in Littleton, I hate to see this kind of development come up because it reminds me of how they are packed in Highlands Ranch. I work in Highlands Ranch. I know how that development goes. You can reach out the window and borrow a cup of sugar. So please consider the density of this property. Consider how many homes are being built in there. And please think about the families that are surrounding this, and particularly people like myself who are so close to the edge of these buildings. And I really thank you for your time and your consideration, but please let Littleton stay a small, well-developed city where we have family areas. My concern being in preschool and teaching is there is no place for children to play out there. They would most generally be playing in the driveways. I don't have any idea where they will plan to walk their dogs. So really, it isn't conducive to families coming out and being outside a lot. We do have nice yards, we have walking paths, but I see that this is really just being too dense for what we would like to see in this area. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kathleen. Terry Keegan, and then on deck, Cynthia Keohane, Keohane.
I'm Terry Keegan. I live at 261 West Jameson. After hearing this eloquent description of heaven on earth, I feel like I'm very inadequate to express my few feelings and share them with you, but I will try. I've been trying to put myself in your shoes, if I were a council member, what would I be looking at? The first thing I'd be looking at is what the what do you call it, the board, what they recommended on a 4-3 vote. The second thing, I'd be concerned, and a lot of that was addressed earlier, about what is important for the city of Littleton. The third thing I'd be looking at is the specific neighborhood and whether this was appropriate and good. And the fourth thing, I couldn't help but consider the people who spent all this time explaining what they plan to do and the amount of time, money, and investment that they have put into it. I would like to start with the first point and talk about the planning board. And the planning board voted 4-3. I don't know the planning board members. I would hope that they have the best interests of Littleton at heart. And they're interested in development, as am I. But 3 members who I would like to also think are competent and are interested in the better development of this city have spent time, and I've heard even at least one or more have visited the site, I hope you have, and recognize that this is not an appropriate development for this place. Now, I think that's significant. The second thing they addressed quite a bit is this right for Littleton? Of course, there's a lot of stores, there's a lot of businesses, a lot of places that use workers. I admit that's great. But that's something you have to consider, obviously. And I like living where I live, let's put it that way. The third thing is the community itself, where we live, the very area of Littleton. And with a little bit of time that I'm allowed, I'd like to stress one thing that I haven't heard mentioned, which bothers me quite a bit. I've lived there 11, 12 years. And most of our traffic coming out of the Littleton Circle, Jameson Place and so on, goes out of that exit, which is just a few feet from Broadway. You ought to try it once in a while because there's a lot of traffic there that comes out and makes a left turn to go east. If you aren't awfully darn careful, there will come a car going south, making a right-hand turn. You'll look to the west, and you'll say, well, I got a half a block. And you'll turn back, and you'll say, where did that car come from? Then you'll look again. Now, when the city was there with their plant, the park district, it didn't seem to be a problem, and they certainly weren't a problem at night. But they said it themselves. They're worried about 2 exits because they're too close together. We have across the street, coming directly from the hospital, right-hand turns, left-hand turns, coming quickly around the corner, and we have to make left-hand turns to get to Broadway. And you looked, and now they want to put a development in with 38 more homes exiting just a few feet away from where Jameson is. I haven't heard it mentioned, but I really don't look forward to that if that's what's going to happen. If I haven't said it, I am against the development as is. In fact, I'm against the development. I think it's inappropriate for that area. I do sympathize with the developers who have put a lot of money into this, but I do believe they've said they've done other projects, and I think a lot of this would be transferable on their part and put it someplace else. I appreciate your consideration. We'll see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Cynthia Cohane, and then on deck is Robert Kovacs, and then after Robert is Deborah.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Cohane, and I live in the same building as Kathleen, so I have the same concerns that she does. But what really facts and data concerns me is the setbacks, because even though there's a precedent for making exceptions to the setbacks, that doesn't mean it's a good precedent, and it doesn't mean we need to continue it. I think we should build things the way the city and the boards and everything has decided to build them with the proper setbacks. I'm not saying everything should always be according to setback, but this is a new development. There's no reason they can't build it to leave the setbacks the way they're supposed to be. So I'm still concerned. I'm concerned about our privacy. I'm concerned about the density, and I think it's going to look like a barracks, and which won't be beautiful. I lived in a condo in Phoenix that was built. It was a wonderful little condo, but the buildings looked like barracks, and they couldn't sell the condos because it was just so unattractive. I'm sure this will be more attractive than that was because it was stucco in Arizona. But I think that that's a concern. So that place ended up being turned into an apartment. But we don't need to follow a possibly bad precedent that's already been set. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Robert Kovacs.
Right. My name is Robert Kovacs, and I live actually at 630 West Jameson Circle, so I'm a little further away. And I tend to be in favor of this project. I know something is going to be developed there, and seeing a residential project is very appealing. I noticed the density is comparable to the density of other properties that are nearby, so I don't have any objection to that. And I like the fact that the developer is taking the responsibility of handling the contamination that is in the area. So that's a plus in a number of ways. I noted that the properties will be $300,000 plus, and so that should be an upgrade to the neighborhood. I noticed a question that was asked earlier by one of the other citizens about storm runoff, and I know that, or at least I believe, that the developer would have to go through the staff that your city has in terms of evaluating whether sufficient storm runoff is being handled. And I don't think that you would allow them to not meet the needs of the storm runoff, so I'm not worried about that. So I would like to see it go through. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah?
Good evening. I'm Deborah Kovacs, and I also live at 630 West Jameson Circle. That is in the patio home part of the South Bridge. And I'd like to offer you the perspective of one of the homeowners who bought a fill-in home. And the patio homes in our area, the first generation of those were built in the mid-'80s, and then some fill-in homes were put in the mid-'90s, and we bought one of those. We have been Littleton residents since 1991 and decided to purchase one of those homes at that time, and we have lived there for now approximately 20 years. And we love it. At the time that we bought our home, I'm pretty sure those original homeowners had some serious misgivings about similar issues to do with the fill-in homes, that one of the ones we bought. And not all of the townhomes had been built at that time, and I had some just kind of gut feeling misgivings about that. I kind of liked the open space we had before the full complement of townhomes were built. But once everything was completed, my concerns were largely alleviated, and I see what a nice development that is now. I'm strongly in favor of this new development. I think that there are issues that will be resolved. I know that there is a full approval process for things like the storm drainage and any kind of cleanup that is to be done, and I'm confident that those things will be met when the process begins. I believe that the type of homes that are going to be built there are very suitable. I don't think we want to see any more apartments. We lived there before those apartments were built, and I think we have enough apartments because there's kind of a lack of commitment that goes along with people moving in and out. I really appreciate the fact that these are for sale homes. They're kind of an intermediate between the townhomes and the patio homes. I think they're a good fit. They're attractive. They're in a good price range. I think they will enhance our property values. And I'm hoping you will look at some of the traffic concerns. I do appreciate some of those, the traffic issues trying to turn out onto Jameson that will occur possibly from this. So as we go along, I'm sure that people will take these issues into consideration. I appreciate the opportunity to listen to people's concerns and to speak about it as well. But I think this would be an asset to our overall community.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, that completes the roster. I'll close the public hearing. And council? Yes. Sure. And name in either a green card or note your address.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Hansen, and I live at 1481 West Dry Creek, so I'm further west, but, constantly in the area. Plus, I'm a realtor in the area, so I know the area quite well. I know what sells. I know what works. I know what doesn't work in that area very well. I've lived in the neighborhood for close to 10 years myself, but also am a resident, born and raised in Littleton, so know Littleton very well. I think this is a good fit, and I think that it's not a perfect fit. Of course, there's not going to be a perfect fit. Nobody's going to come in here and buy this 3 acres and put 3 houses on it or put one with horses. We're not going to see that. We're going to see somebody who's going to come in here and do it right. They're going to do something that is economically viable for them and for the neighborhood. And that's what we're looking for something like this. And so that's what we're going to get. And I think that's what we're going to get with this product. I think that there's a lot of feeling about what's going to go in there and it might block views and things like that. And I think that happens with all development. It's something that we all just have to understand that goes on with new development. I don't think it's going to be as bad as most people think. I really believe that they're going to leave those trees there. I do believe that they're going to come in there and just, scorched earth that area is just not really what these people have in mind. I don't believe that. I don't know them personally, but I think that I've seen enough with development to know that this is what people are going to do. So I think they're going to leave that. I think that there might be some encroachment with vision, thing like that, of views and things, but not to the point where it's going to be worse than what's there now. What's there now is garbage. I show houses in the neighborhood all the time. People are always like, what is that? And I have to explain to them, I don't know what's going to happen with that. Now we kind of have an idea. Now I can say, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going in there. This is going to be something that helps us get our homes sold. That's what I care about in that neighborhood, plus the fact that I think it is a very sellable product. It's something that I have buyers already that would like something like this. So in a market like we're in right now, I need product. We don't have enough inventory in Littleton. We don't have enough new inventory in Littleton, and I know we're going to get that with Marathon. But something like this is a good thing for Southbridge. As long as they don't take my bridge down, that's all I care about. Thank you.
So noted, Jeff. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Yes, sir?
Thank you for hearing me. My name is Kenny Chance. I live at 250 West Jameson. We back up to this development, and I think we're glossing over some of the facts. These aren't products. These are homes. And when I'm sitting here in my porch, and that building they say is 30 foot, well, you add the other 10 foot going up to their building, that's 40 foot. Now, the people that say it's going to enhance our value, it's not. It's not at all. The sun comes up that direction. I'm a realtor as well. And when we are going to sell our house before this is built, when I take somebody out here, I don't have to disclose that you're not going to be able to see the sun. You're going to see everybody on their first and second floor looking down on you. I don't have to disclose that, but I am. So this isn't about money. It isn't about greed, even though that's what I feel like this is. I think we should amend it. It should be one level that backs up to us. They can still make millions off of this development. Let's start all over with this. We're not saying leave it like it is. It's not a blight. It's private. It's where we live. It's not a product. One level, fix it. They can still make a lot of money, and we won't have the intrusion and the lack of real estate value that backs up to this property on the size that it does. Thank you.
Thank you. And Pam? Take one of the notes that I put earlier because Pam had indicated she wasn't going to speak, so for council notes, please.
Thanks. And I'm Pam Chepburn. I live in District 1, not near here, but there were some Star Trek movies on TV in the past week, and I think one of them was The Wrath of Khan. And in that movie, Spock makes a comment about Khan. He says it, he indicates two-dimensional thinking. And so I'm going to pay Glenn the honor of being Khan. Our specs talk about density, which is nice if you're in a two-dimensional space. But our planning documents do not consider three-dimensional space or adjacent discontinuous geography, and they should. I've spoken many times, and I will continue to, about a continuous improvement process for our comprehensive plan and our other planning documents. And this, to me, is an example of where we need improvement. So we need infill descriptions, and they need to consider proximity to existing homes and other buildings and uses. And they need to consider 3 dimensions, not just 2. We live in a river valley. Our plan says highlight the river. So we all know this. It's all sloped. Drainage is important. Heights between buildings are going to be different, and that's important in considering our plans. And if that was in our plans, some of these people wouldn't even need to speak. I don't think the developers would have proposed what they did. So I don't know, is it 13 mil for 38 buildings just like this? If they only put in 30, it'd still be 10 mil. And they'd have more space to deal with drainage issues and to create more space from the neighbors. These may hold property values, but I think the neighbors in proximity will lose property value, and that should be considered. So I have 2 considerations. One is long-term. Our planning documents need to address infill and issues like this with geography. And the other one is consider the neighbors' value, not just the developers. And maybe this can be smaller. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Good evening, Council. My name is Matthew Agnew. I've lived in Littleton since May of 1969. I have a great concern with this project. A gentleman spoke earlier about traffic, and they said that traffic counts are not very high for that street. Littleton Police Department sits on that street every single Saturday morning and does radar. That's a very busy street. I walk in that area quite often with my dog. Just last week, Tuesday or Wednesday, early in the morning, rollover accident right at that corner that the gentleman was talking about. 38 units is probably 50 more cars twice a day, plus their visitors. I just think it's too many units for the property and wish you'd consider the size of how many units you're going to allow in there. Thank you.
I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to council. Opportunity to discuss or ask questions.
I wonder if at some point we might want to give everybody a 5-minute to stretch their legs.
Good time. Okay, let's do.
And me especially.
I understand that. So it is currently 8:35. If we reconvene at 8:42, does that give you enough time? Good evening. If we could reconvene. Gary, as the applicant, you heard some of the questions and other comments that came up this evening. Those that are germane to the rezone, you may want to respond to give us at least some of your thoughts on that.
Thank you. Take the easy one first. We're not sure about the time frame of this project that a gentleman brought up. If the sales velocity are such, we think it's a 1 to 2 year project to get everything constructed on this site. As far as the landscaping, we are going to and have a landscape architect on our team. We will create a landscaping plan for our property, and that will be submitted to the city for their approval. As far as the privacy fences and the trees that are on the townhome project, we're not going to touch those. Those aren't our property. Those trees on that north side are on the Southbridge property. They're not on our property. The privacy fences are on their property, not on our property. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Drainage was brought up a couple times. You know, this is a rezoning. This isn't a final plan. We haven't engineered all of the drainage on the property. That will be done by, again, on an engineer on our staff and submitted to the city for their approval. So we don't have all the particulars with drainage. We are pretty confident that the existing site has more hard surfaces than ours. There's a lot of asphalt and a lot of concrete. We will provide more green space than what is there to let there won't be as severe a runoff as what they're experiencing right now. They mentioned a 30-foot height, and that's on our zoning plan. And in actuality, the homes that we're going to be building.
Doug, the projector, please.
Yeah, I want the projector. I just want to bring up this one slide one more time. The product that you see down at the bottom is actually about 25 feet high, and and I think you measure that from the final grade. Is that correct? From final grade. So although the zoning allows 30, our product is going to be 25. And again, I just want to put this slide up there on that north side. Those trees are on their property. That fence is on their property, and that is the impact on our homes to the north boundary homes.
May I interrupt just to ask a quick question?
What,
if you know the height of the existing maintenance building on the corner?
On the corner, on Jameson, or the corner of the north property?
On the north side. I guess I'm looking at that existing maintenance building on the previous.
One up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 17 feet high.
Okay, thank you.
What's the setback on that one? Do you have any idea?
It says 15.5.
Yeah, 15 and a half feet, and we're going to be 15.
Okay. Other questions of the applicant from council? Okay. Yes, Bruce.
Will you talk a little bit about the traffic study that you did?
I wish I could. I'm not a traffic engineer. It was a requirement by the city. I'm not quite sure as to what that traffic study showed. Maybe Wendell, you could talk to that. I don't have knowledge of it. I know we had to pay an engineer to do the traffic study. We submitted to the city for their approval, and they approved that study, the impact it's going to have on Jameson Avenue, but I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Do you have a specific question? Staff may be able to respond to that.
Well, there were a couple of issues brought up, and I know that there tends to be kind of moments of activity in and out of any neighborhood, and because of that access there to Santa Fe or Broadway, and anytime you do add additional traffic, additional cars, and just kind of what they determine, and I noticed with the two, one of the things that did strike my attention was when someone mentioned that you have the two in-outs and their proximity to each other, and what did the traffic engineer indicate in terms of any kind of safety concerns? I'm assuming there weren't any since it's here, but was that looked at?
Right, Councilmember. Actually, the reason for, Jan pointed out to me, that the reason why it was access or emergency access only on the easternmost driveway was because of the proximity to whatever Jameson that is that runs north-south directly east of the project. So that was the proximity that we were trying to stretch out by not allowing traffic out. Just looking at the counts, I mean, we look at what's the morning peak. We expect 33 trips, roughly half going out, half coming into the site. And then in the PM peak, which is, I believe, 5 to 7 p.m., 21 total trips, again, about 50-50. So there are additional trips being added. I think our bottom line was it's not a large increase to Jameson.
Thanks.
Okay. Other questions from council of the applicant? Bruce?
Yeah, hi. Could you put that slide back up that shows the elevations? I'm just curious whether, when you looked at this piece of land, whether you gave any consideration to trying to scoop off 5 feet of it or 8 feet of it and taking it the whole plateau that's there down, if that was given any consideration.
We haven't done a grading study yet. I don't think that's going to be feasible. There's quite a bit of grade going from Jameson Avenue to our northern border. We haven't really done a grading plan. To address your question, I don't think that's going to be possible you want about lowering the whole site down, basically.
One of the concerns is then that the retaining wall that stays up around the border, with the stress and strains of putting additional housing up there and all the things you'll be doing, well, you had mentioned during the presentation you were concerned about that issue, and you had stated that you had a position about that. Could you restate that again?
Well, we do have a concern about that, but we will be responsible if there's any damage now or in the future. We will be responsible for any damage that might be done to those retaining walls. Those retaining walls are rock walls, are built very well. There's the possibility we get a little close with our equipment, but we will be responsible to make sure that any damage we do, we will take care of.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Stallman.
Sort of talking about the same relative issues. One gentleman mentioned sun, and I assume this is more of a winter issue when the sun is going to be lower. But if you guys are doing soil remediation as far as the hazmat cleanup is concerned, wouldn't that sort of theoretically take some of the soil out anyway as part of your grading is concerned?
You know, the contaminated soil, although it is mentioned in our phase 2, there's not a lot of cubic yards of dirt that are involved in that.
Okay.
Most of it is really contained on the south border of our property, closer to Jameson, closer to that one facility. So we're not talking about thousands and thousands of yards of dirt that we're going to have to remove. It's more like hundreds of yards of dirt.
Okay. And I know. The issue of just what sort of the angles, it's probably a little bit over the top in terms of just how much sun is actually hitting those. But you'd made a comment about you think there'll be somewhat more accessible, access to the sky because you've got the green space in between the
we have 16 feet in between our buildings.
Okay.
And that building on the top there is 160 feet long.
Okay. Hypothetically, if to the issue that the citizens are raising about the setbacks, and I get this is an economic issue, but if the setbacks were, pick a number, 20 instead of 15, 20 and 15 instead of 15 and 10, what would that do to this particular configuration in your opinion? I mean, is it the kind of thing where things get squeezed together more, or do you do 36 units instead of 38?
I think you squeeze it to a point where you start losing units. Yeah. You get down to 32, 34 units, and the economics for us don't work that way. It was mentioned we're making millions of dollars here. We're not making millions of dollars. It works at 38 units. It doesn't work at 34 units. It just doesn't.
Okay.
And to answer your question, more specifically, the further away you get from our boundaries, our borders, our property lines, the less units we can build.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm good for the moment.
Okay. Randy?
Mr. Wenger, thanks for coming. I have a couple questions. I may be going down a rabbit hole as I want to do. I seem to remember hearing somewhere that the location of the utilities that you were seeking to tie into, that there were sort of an easy way and a hard way, and that there was some kind of ongoing negotiation or discussion with neighbors. And I wondered if you feel comfortable expressing to us how that's going.
Can I put this back on? Whatever this was.
Doug, put the computer on, please.
Currently, this little green area that you see up here in the north section there, that has a storm sewer and the sewer from that facility going out on our site into the townhome property and eventually out into Jameson Circle. There's a sewer line and a storm sewer. We are in negotiations, or we're in negotiations with the Townhome Association. We need to enhance the easement that goes through their property to increase the size of that, to bring water from that north side as well. If that's not an option for us, we will be running our water down Jameson Avenue to meet the requirements of the Denver Water Department. As far as the storm sewer and and its engineering and how big it's going to be. We haven't, again, taken this that far with our engineering yet.
So to be clear, I'm not telling you how to do your business, but there are economic realities involved, and if I'm not mistaken, in our very complete package that we reviewed, that there was some concern from that townhome association and the president and stuff, and that might be something that you could figure out a way to be accommodating to them if they could be accommodating to you.
We have reached out. We certainly are open for suggestions to help them buffer our project, more landscaping. We've talked about a financial contribution, but no number has ever been talked about. We are open to all those things.
Okay, well, thank you for making that offer.
Just a reminder, that one's not a rezone issue.
Yeah, I understand, but it's an economic reality of their eventual development if they can accomplish that.
Understood.
I guess I wanted to also dive back into a little bit of what was previously mentioned by a few of the folks who came down to speak, and talking about concerns about water and sewer drainage, and I think we've addressed that in terms of that's not before us right now. And the mention of retaining wall concerns, and you said that we will be responsible. Maybe I'm getting far afield here, but you talked about your development team, and you talked about KB Homes being our partners, and I guess I'm trying to figure out who is we that's going to be responsible. So are you sort of the entitlement for this, and then KB Homes is going to take over, or are you going to remain in the deal, or how does that work, if I might?
I don't know if that's pertinent, but I'll answer your question. Stone Ridge Homes, my company, has it under contract with South Suburban.
Right.
We are going to go through the complete entitlement process.
Right.
Stone Ridge Homes is going to be responsible for cleaning the contamination.
Right.
When that's all completed, KB Homes will then become the builder on this property, and they will own it from us. So we are not going to stay in the venture during that time.
Right, and so...
Does that answer your question?
I guess my precision is when you say we will be responsible, I'm trying to figure out who the we is. You will no longer be involved in the deal at that point when they're building, correct?
That's correct.
When they start moving dirt.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Other questions from council? Okay, thank you, Mr. Wenger.
Thank you.
Council, time for discussion or other questions? Looking for a motion?
Motion to approve on second reading the ordinance approving the rezoning of property known as 101 West Jameson Avenue from PD Plan Development District to PDR Plan Development Residential District in the Jameson Village General Plan Development Plan.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Additional comments? Councilmember Stallman?
Okay. Go back here. I'll try to do this with some degree of brevity, but I have done this somewhat consistently with most of the rezones we've done. They come before us for purposes of setting context. What our responsibility is, broadly speaking, is to render a decision based upon the weight of evidence provided in what's referred to as a quasi-judicial hearing. In that regard, we look at what's in the code as it exists and what's required of us to decide and to find that a rezoning is applicable. So in this particular instance, Code Section 10-2-23 talks about the PD Plan Development District, and it says that the Plan Development District is concept or structure is created to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare by allowing more flexible development based upon a comprehensive and integrated plan. It goes on to say that the intent of the council that put this into place and that is as it exists today, and therefore us, is to, first of all, encourage more creative and effective use of land and public or private services, and to accommodate changes in land development technology so the resulting economies benefit the community. Encourage innovation and efficiency in residential development to meet the growing demands for housing of all types and designs for persons of any social or economic status. Encourage innovative development or redevelopment of all land uses to meet the contemporary needs of the community by providing for a greater variety and mix of uses, including those which may coexist on the same parcel or within the same building as shown on an approved general PD plan. Provide a process which relates the design and development of a site to the particular characteristics of the site. Require the nature and intensity of development to be supported by adequate utilities, transportation network, drainage systems, and open space to serve the development and minimize impacts on adjacent, existing, and future development. And encourage development that is consistent with the policies and guidelines established and adopted in the adopted comprehensive plan for the area and for the city. And a lot of that information is included in the documents and the staff memoranda and so forth. We also, as a matter of course, would go back and ask what the law says with respect to municipal rezoning government decisions. And in particular, one reference that I've used before is a volume called the Colorado Land Planning and Development Law. It's the 8th edition. And on page 78, it says, in evaluating a rezoning application, a local government asks whether the proposal complies with the comprehensive plan. If so, the proposed rezoning need only bear a reasonable relationship to the general welfare of the community. If the rezoning would be in conflict with the plan, however, the applicant, generally needs to show either there was an error made in establishing the current zoning or there has been a change in conditions of the neighborhood that supports the requested zoning change. So that's essentially some of the context of what we're doing. Based on what I've heard this evening and what we've read and what's been presented, I find as follows. I do believe that the rezoning requested is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and therefore the applicant does not need to show that there was an error, nor that there has been a change in changing conditions in the neighborhood. And I don't believe that even if there were, if it weren't consistent with the comprehensive plan, I think there hasn't been changes in that neighborhood outside of the fact that we're talking about eliminating really a blighted site in the true sense of the word. While the various city plans contain a variety of desirable outcomes, they don't always resonate with one another, much the way the conversation tonight, some have been pro, some have been con, and there's not always perfect resonance, as the one gentleman suggested. There's always a balance between competing objectives, and there is no perfect solution. I think this is a good project. I think it is appropriate to this location. I think the developer has worked diligently to accommodate and meet many of the stated comprehensive plan, neighborhood plan, and corridor goals, while doing things like making the project Energy Star compliant, for sale product or housing as opposed to apartments. And I acknowledge the one lady's comment that, and we've heard this a lot, that the city has an awful lot of apartment properties at this point in time, so it's nice to see a for sale development coming in as well. I take the applicant at his word that the landscaping buffers and the plans, when they're finally approved by the city, will be as represented. They are going to clean up the hazmat situation, which is clearly detrimental to the area. Let me see. With respect to the project scale, the height, mass, setbacks, and some of the transportation issues, they're, again, not perfect, but I don't find them to be unreasonable relative to the context of this particular location. The density, as quoted, and if I go back to the staff memo, it talks about the development standard comparison chart on page 2 of our packet handout. The density for the approved Southbridge PD plan area was 12.64 dwelling units per acre. The Southbridge townhomes were 11 dwelling units per acre. The Southbridge townhomes built, let's see, in the adjacent filing was 13.7 dwelling units per acre, and this is a shade under 12.7. So that does not strike me as being demonstrably excessively dense relative to what's in the area. I get that the layout is somewhat different. I think the nature of the housing type we're talking about here, as I mentioned, is desirable for the city. And based upon the balance of all of that, I'm going to find that the requested change in zoning is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan, and I will vote to approve this. Thank you.
Comments from council? Deb?
I agree with what Councilmember Stallman said. I'm not going to repeat his comments. I do think that this plan is in compliance with the comp plan, and I will say that I think regarding the type of housing, the fact that it is for sale is a much needed benefit to the community. We talked a little bit about diversity of housing, and we haven't had something like this in quite some time. It's always challenging when there's a development that comes in next to you, and I completely understand, and I have a great deal of appreciation for everyone that came down, and I thank you all for coming down, and I thank you all for your comments. I think that you were incredibly insightful and sharing your thoughts with us. This does meet the conditions that are required by the applicant for a rezone. And I would say that as this project moves forward, that there continues to be a good dialogue between, or if this project moves forward, that there continues to be a good dialogue between the developer and the community, because that is really what will help create an environment that everybody feels more comfortable in, because you also have to think about the people that may move into this environment. They will be the neighbors too. So I think that is key to helping ease some of the growing pains that will eventually happen as neighborhoods redevelop. So I do support this.
Randy?
I would also like to thank those assembled here today for coming down and speaking in an impassioned yet very, very polite and respectful manner. And the council appreciates that. We're not always treated to such respect. And so thank you for that. I find that it does meet, and I won't repeat what the other two council members said, the comp plan. I will say that one of the speakers did suggest that he or she had hoped that we had toured the site, and in fact I did walk the site today, the perimeter, and I felt that it is a very, very difficult site indeed, both to develop and to live next to. In fact, even as it currently exists, the photographs that the applicant showed with the trees, and it is kind of overbearing even as it is. Even without the buildings. It seems to me that the grade is about halfway up to the top of the door of the first floor of the existing units, and that the fence is almost to the roof of the first units, and then you've got all these trees and stuff. So I think that some of you may find that because of those beautiful lush trees that are already there, which are only going to continue to get bigger, you may not see the buildings to the extent that you may think you will. I don't know, but I'd like to think that that's the case. I'd also like to echo Councilmember Brinkman in her urging the developer, which I kind of sort of felt like I was doing before, to continue to reach out to the community. And I guess I would like to say that if this project at least passes this threshold and moves on, that the developer has made a commitment here on TV that he will be responsible, and whether that's current developer or KB Homes, whom he introduced as his partners, I would like to encourage the city to be particularly vigilant to enforce, to the extent that we can, any actions that might regard some of the concerns that were voiced tonight, such as the retaining walls and some of that. So for those reasons, I'm going to support the project as well.
Okay. Want to say something?
Yeah, as the other council members have discussed, our range of discussion really does go to the issue of the rezone. And for the reasons that were already addressed, I think this is a valid rezone and an appropriate rezone, one that we would approve, that I would certainly approve. But I do have concerns about the spot, the slot, the space. And those were really the most impassioned discussions tonight, and I tend to always try to look at the existing folks and the existing neighborhood first, not the promises of the development coming in. But having said that, the way this thing is laid out, the way that the boundaries are put in, the way the fence is in, the way it's been elevated, and the way it's been treated in the past, bringing it to the future, this is a really tough one. And I think that's part of the challenge. And then we did touch beyond just zoning with some discussions with the developer and some discussions about city expectations as far as the quality and respect for the neighbors. And again, staying within the context of the zoning, it's an appropriate rezone, but I think we did hopefully lay some groundwork that it'll be done in a manner that does take into account the quality of the neighborhood.
So I could say something, but I think everybody else has already said it well, so thank you.
Okay. I'm going to make some comments because I've seen many of you out on the trail, and I walk in front of this property at least once a day, and I drive down Jameson probably 3 or 4 times a day. So this is in my hood. I was on the South Suburban Park and Rec District Board and was on the property when it was active and began my work to have that service center relocated. And I am so excited that it relocated. It was an inappropriate use in our neighborhood. Some of that being said, I think most of you will agree that this really has been a closed property to the neighborhood, very much one that, you can see it through the cyclone fence along Jameson, but most of the rest of it is actually closed off and not very attractive. What is being proposed for the use is really consistent with the neighborhood. It's residential. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the fact that it's actually going to be home ownership. Some of that is material to the rezone. Some of it isn't. But I will tell you, I'm very familiar with the property and what's there. And I've actually delivered flyers or possibly even election material to every one of your doorsteps. So I know where those retaining walls are, and I know that till something's built, it's very easy to feel anxious because it's hard to visualize. And I applaud the applicant actually for doing some side cuts on the property to indicate what is going to be happening. Unfortunately, in our day and age, view corridors are not guaranteed. I'd love that to be the case. I could tell the story about the day that I moved into Beaumar South when I first bought property and moved to Littleton in 1990. There were 4 earth movers in the backyard, not quite the backyard, but the property behind that on the day we were moving in. That was to be open space property, so I can very much viscerally identify with some of your anxiety. With all of that, I would ask you to try and visualize what it can be. I know there will be dirt and dust during construction. I think even the best of folks find ways not to necessarily keep all the dust down, despite their best of efforts on that. It's a tough property in that it's a square property, and I know that a lot of the neighborhood surrounding that has some nice flowing streets. But the unfortunate part is what we're left with here is a square property. And when I talk about that, I talk about all of us. And I think a good effort has been done for what KB Homes has done elsewhere, and they come with some good reputation for what homes they've built and the quality of those homes. I think we've talked about open space and how they're actually going to have some very short driveways, so there is open space that's there. There are some side yards. I wish they were as flowing as some of your side yards are, but that is not the case in somewhat of this combined property. I think it complies with the comp plan and all the other comments that have been made, and I will be voting in favor of this. So, council absent, additional discussion, ready to vote? And a vote for this is a vote for the rezone. And again, it requires 5.
The vote is 6 in favor. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We'll take about 30 seconds to wait for those folks that might be choosing to leave.
It's tough.
If I don't die in my sleep
on Jackass Hill
from my concussion.
Look at the hotel that's being
Yeah, you didn't
built.
sound like me.
Well, and think of the vista that the people on the properties in Rangeview back in there had, and they're blocking the whole thing.
I go back to the one we had on HPD.
That's exactly how.
Okay, council, we'll move on to reports. And first up, city manager.
No report this evening, Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I know I usually don't give you a report, but if the council will indulge me for about a minute.
You're being indulged.
Thank you. I just thought it was important that, given some of the comments that were made during public comment tonight about Councilmember Stein, that bordered on allegations that he had violated the law with respect to conflict of interest laws and votes, that it be important that at the same meeting that those allegations were made, that the record be corrected. The property owner in question is certainly entitled to his own opinion, and he was, apparently his letter to the editor was quoted. But for anyone who is watching, for people who are here for the council, I just want to make it clear, at least from my understanding, Councilmember Stein, in his capacity as a business owner, contacted the property owner and asked if the property might be for sale. The property owner said no. Apparently then shared some other opinions about urban renewal, and after the call, it's my understanding that Councilmember Stein sent a letter to the property owner thanking him for speaking to him, letting him know he understood the property was not for sale, and indicating that his company no longer had any interest in the property as a result of that. No votes had been taken during that time. I trust if the property owner had had a different position on whether he might be willing to sell and the parties were in negotiations, then when a vote were to come before the council, Councilmember Stein would have disclosed it and he would have recused himself from acting. So I understand this is a touchy situation or touchy set of issues in the community, but I want to make clear for any of those who heard the allegations that, again, in my opinion, bordered on allegations that the law had been broken, that at least in my legal opinion, no laws have been broken. There is no conflict of interest, and it was a matter that was raised and finished and appears to be done. So thank you for letting me share that.
And the footnote that I will add to it is consideration of the urban renewal plan area is not on the council's agenda until November 4th. So there's been no vote taken or consideration given on the part of council yet on that property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Cole?
Well, nothing except reminder about the Harvest Fair this weekend at the museum Saturday.
Thank you. Councilmember Stallman?
Couple things. The craft fair looked to be a pretty good success on Saturday at Kettering. I don't see Mr. Nims isn't here, but I never heard the final numbers, but it certainly was teeing up to be a very vigorous day when we were setting it up. So attended the library board meeting on the 1st of October, and Kay Wilmisher came in and made a presentation about the Littleton Coalition on Aging Well that now has a presence at Bemis Library. And
Soft opening. A soft opening.
A soft opening?
Yeah, they've not had their grand opening yet.
Okay, all right, so something to look forward to. Celebratory. But they're teeing up a lot of volunteers. They are initiating what's called a Senior Reach program with Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health. It's a call center with access to support, resources, and services. And Kay sent me the contact information, so just to get it out there in case anybody's interested, the hotline is 1-866-217-5808. That's 866-217-5808, and it's www.seniorreach.org. Good resource to connect with in the event there's an interest in helping seniors in and around the community if they're having potential issues. Lastly, just again, sort of in the same vein that the city attorney mentioned, and appreciate Mayor Cernanek making a couple comments during some of the unscheduled public comments. Unfortunately, we seem to be hearing consistently from the same people, and the same people that we hear from seem to be consistently glossing over certain attributes of the situation with respect to urban renewal that's disappointing at best and perhaps exhibiting an element of bad faith at worst. One speaker mentioned, again, the issue of taking taxes from the school district, and I know the city manager's had some comments or conversations with his counterparts at Littleton Public Schools. Do you want to make any comment about what you've talked to them about?
Certainly. The short version is that the school district is in full support of the urban renewal project, and we're working on an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement right now, which will hold the school harmless and still allow for the projects, potential projects, to come through. As I've said many times, until you actually have a project and you understand what the public improvement costs are, what the revenues are those sales tax revenues, are those property tax revenues, you don't know how it will all play out. But having met with South Suburban, who is actually taking up this, I believe, tomorrow, as well as the school district, which will be taking it up later this week at a study session, and then 2 meetings, which is what it takes for them, I think, to take some action on a resolution. But there is support, and they understand the implications, and they understand what council's trying to do around community redevelopment, and so fully anticipate that we will reach agreements with those two as well as the county. And as you all passed a resolution saying they all have a seat at the table, they're aware of that, and we'll make sure it happens should a project come forward.
Yeah, thank you very much. And, you know, one of the other commenters made offered the comment that the owner of the Columbine Square property, the landlord, kicked tenants out in order to get urban renewal money. I'm paraphrasing. But of course, tenants who have signed leases can't have their leases summarily terminated without the landlord incurring many penalties, up to and including specific performance of the contract, which is a lease. Essentially, I think what ended up happening was the leases expired, and the owner has a different view of the use of that property and is pursuing that, but there wasn't overtly anything illegal or unethical involved in the owner of a piece of property trying to decide to change the use of that property because it has a higher economic value potentially. We haven't seen it. There's no plan filed. Nobody has any idea what that's going to look like at this point in time beyond rumor and conjecture. But I will agree with the speaker who did say that like her, council is pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-Littleton, and we merely view urban renewal as another tool in the toolbox to help us accomplish those ends. If it makes sense, if it's economically viable, if it will help improve some parcels within the community that have remained vacant or underdeveloped or underutilized for decades, even in an environment where you've got the lowest cost of funds we've seen in our lifetimes, then the opportunity to use that tool to make something positive happen for the benefit of the community seems like a potentially good idea that's worth investigating. Thank you.
I would add, if I could, that that property owner began conversations with the city long before condition surveys through LIFT were started too. So that developer had been working, or that property owner had been working on redevelopment of that site prior to.
Okay.
And again, we don't know ultimately what public improvements would be necessary, and so whether tax increment finance and bonding through an urban renewal authority ultimately makes any financial sense for that developer nor for the city.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Brinkman.
Well, along the same lines, on the urban renewal and getting out the real message, last week, City Manager Penny and the Urban Renewal Director, Jim Reese, met with 4 of our local businesses and had a conversation with them about what does urban renewal mean to them, to Littleton, how are they going to be impacted, how are their businesses impacted. All 3 of those businesses are in an urban renewal zone. And one of the businesses is a downtown business who was interested in how that type of redevelopment, what impact would that have on neighboring businesses in Littleton as a whole. And it was a very open and honest and factual conversation, and it is on Channel 8. We will be dicing it up into smaller portions where specific questions get answered. But it was a real representation of what the concerns of the businesses are, and then how those are addressed by what urban renewal is really about. And what was great was at the end of this, the businesses were very appreciative not only of the opportunity to have that discussion, but they really echoed their appreciation for the approach that Littleton is taking in terms of supporting businesses and supporting them, and that they have noticed a substantial change not only in Littleton but in their own businesses and their businesses' success over the last number of years. And so they are in full support of how they can help support us in supporting them. So it was a real great conversation. I think City Manager enjoyed it too. Had the South Platte Working Group meeting a couple of weeks ago, and at that meeting we brought in, give me her name, the sign lady. Kristen Cipher. And she gave a presentation on the signage program that we're working on for South Platte Park and the Mary Carter through Littleton. We've always talked about the need for improving the wayfinding down there, and old signs and things that don't mean anything and things that are out of date and signs that are missing based on some new trails that have been put in. It was very well received. The group very much engaged in it, and they were very excited about it. And so now it's kind of the city managers are meeting together throughout Sheridan, Littleton, and Inglewood to see how that effort can spread along the trail through our 3 municipalities, through Arapahoe County, and how Arapahoe County can then support that also. So we'd have some more be consistent signage and messaging. So that's a real good move forward and plus on that. And then I want to ask the mayor then to weigh in on this, but I'm becoming more and more concerned about the maybe the lack of conversation that council's had with the planning board over the last number of months. We have a lot of things going on, a lot of things are happening, and we've talked about it a little bit in some study sessions, that I'm just not completely convinced that the planning board should be chasing down these neighborhood studies at this point. We're really not looking at going into these neighborhoods and doing any substantial changes. That we've talked about it repeatedly, that it is our commercial corridors where the redevelopment is most necessary and obviously then the most beneficial. So they recently held one of the neighborhood meetings, and I know that the mayor has some feedback from that, but it really did create a bit of a stir, and I don't think it was necessary. I would like to see us have a conversation with them where we need to agree on what our messaging would be, but to redirect them out of these neighborhoods and maybe find another way to update those plans without this time, the time that they're going to spend on this. It may be better spent on something else.
Do you want to hand it off yet?
Okay, done.
Okay.
It's my concussion.
Unless anyone on council disagrees, I'm going to be stronger in this, which is to direct city staff to set up a joint conversation between the council and the planning board, possibly at a breakfast or a study session. And until after that, cease and desist with regard to any neighborhood meetings at this point in time. What Councilmember Brinkman alluded to is there was a heritage neighborhood meeting, and for folks that don't know that our comprehensive plan in the neighborhood needs to at least administratively be updated, the current 1981 comprehensive plan shows Gallup Street going through. There is no one on council or on staff that is proposing for that to occur. It just happens to be what's in the document that needs to be cleaned up. And to take that as a proposal, or to even have heard as a proposal from the city, created a tremendous uproar that should not have occurred, and we need to get together. And I'm sorry if it seems like we're stepping on the toes of our volunteers and our delegatees on this. Possibly it's our fault a little bit in getting some of that communication out, but we need to clean that up before we create any more upsettedness that can occur that is unwarranted. And so we need to get very, very clear on that and to have the folks focus on that. And I don't know if the city manager had a chance to check when the scheduling for those TOD studies are, but if we were looking at areas where they could focus, it's certainly in our commercial areas, and it's in the TOD studies where they can focus their time and their efforts and be constructive. There may be other elements on our commercial corridors, but those are timely elements where we need energy spent. And if staff can come up with a proposal for how to get through the administrative update to the neighborhood plans and get that efficiently accomplished, that will take care of the neighborhood plans. If anyone on council disagrees with me, you can take me out behind the shed, but that's the direction. Did I do okay, Deb?
You did great.
Okay.
Oh, very good.
So, Reese, I'm sorry.
You need clarification?
I was going to suggest that within the next couple of weeks, we'll schedule most likely a breakfast with the council and the planning board. Study sessions are packed up, and then the TOD studies are going to start early next year. With the holidays coming up, I don't know that we really lose a whole lot, considering it's really about the next 6 weeks that we have, and then the holidays are going to kick in anyway. So I think we can make all of that work. So I will check with Glenn and the planning chair, and we'll figure out a time. I'll work with you, Mayor, and we'll get it scheduled as soon as possible.
Thank you. Randy? I just want to mention a couple of things that for the rest of the council. I have signed a declaration with regard Conflict Resolution Month being October. I don't know if the Senator Newell is going to come by at some point in time, but that has moved forward. Also a proclamation with regard Childhood Cancer Awareness Week, which is November 2nd through the 8th. proclamation on that. I have a good friend that's a pediatric oncologist, so but it's also a national recognition for some of that. So those are definitely out there. And a couple other things that are happening this month that folks should be aware of possibly is Libby Bort's Assisted Living Center is going to be celebrating its 20th anniversary. So that's going to be happening this month. For those folks that haven't put their applications in, so they can run around in short shorts, Councilman Stallman, this is the month for Littleton Stride, for folks to get out there. And there's a number of things that are happening this weekend between downtown, between Pumpkin Follies and the Festa Fall at Hudson Gardens. So hope to see folks that are out there. And then the following weekend is the International Craft Fair that's out at Kettering again. So with that, anything else? Seeing nothing, thank you for your patience this evening. And we're adjourned at 9:37.